Howdy y'all and welcome to this special February outlook. Before we get started, just a disclaimer here that we cannot forecast anything over a week out, so please take this forecast with a grain of salt. To take a look at what we could expect for the month of February, here are some key factors that's going to be influencing our weather here in the month ahead. Now, of course, most of y'all already know about ENSO. Some of y'all probably already know about NAO and QBO. And of course, we have the rest of them, which is AO and the lesser known ones. But we're going to only cover the ones that are really known and play a significant role in our February weather. Starting off first with the ENSO. ENSO refers to a recurring climate pattern involving changes in sea surface temperatures and winds in the equatorial Pacific Ocean. It has three phases, which is El Niño, which means warmer waters, La Niña means cooler waters, and of course neutral means average, which means sort of both in a way. These phases influence global weather patterns by altering atmospheric circulation, which affects storm tracks, temperatures, and precipitation. Currently, we are in a La Niña phase with cooler than normal waters in the Pacific. This La Niña is weak and is expected to transition to neutral by the time we head into spring, with a 75% chance of neutrality during January to March. In practical terms, La Niña acts like a cold enhancer for the northern U.S. It strengthens the jet stream in a way that pulls colder air southward from Canada and the Arctic, increasing the likelihood of below average temperatures and more frequent winter storms. For example, it can lead to drier conditions in the south, but wetter, snowier weather in the north and Midwest. This setup contributes to the forecast of colder outbreaks in February, though the weakening phase may allow some moderation later in the month. And as you can see here on the left, currently in a weak La Niña, going to be heading into ENSO-neutral as we head into spring, and potentially El Nino as we head into summertime and into wintertime. And I did post on X and Facebook and even here on YouTube community posts of what this all means when it comes to spring severe weather season, our summer season, and of course next winter. So go ahead and check that out while you're at it. Now the NAO, is down here. We're going to be in an NAO negative. Now what does that all mean? Well, it measures the differences in atmospheric pressure between the subtropical high pressure system near the Azores in the Atlantic and the subpolar low pressure system near Iceland. It has positive and negative phases which dictate how air flows across the North Atlantic and into North America. A positive NAO means stronger westerly winds that bring milder, wetter weather to the eastern part of the country. And contrast, a negative NAO weakens these winds, creating a blocking pattern that traps cold air over eastern North America and Europe. For February, models predict a strengthening negative NAO, which promotes persistent cold spells by allowing Arctic air to dip southward. This can result in temperatures 5 to 10 degrees below normal in the east, along with increased chances for snowstorms. Think of it as a traffic jam in the atmosphere that prevents warm air from moving in, keeping that cold air locked in place for longer periods. So basically saying that we could be coming in on more snowstorms out east and remaining in a cold pattern, which we'll take a look at all of the models here in a little bit. Then I'll show you the expert guidance at the Climate Prediction Center. Then I'll show you my bold prediction and what I think we could expect for the month ahead. Now you can see NAO negative here. Now next we have the QBO, which is up here. Now what that means is it's a regular oscillation of wind in the stratosphere about 10 to 30 miles above Earth's surface over the equator. These winds alternate between easterly, blowing from east to west, and westerly, which is west to east, every 28 to 29 months, influencing the polar vortex and weather below. We are currently in the easterly or negative phase, where east to west winds dominate. This phase can disrupt the polar vortex, a large area of low pressure and cold air spinning around the North Pole, by promoting sudden stratospheric warming events, which we dealt with here at the end of January. When the vortex weakens or splits, it releases waves or cold air into mid-latitudes like the US, for example. For February, this easterly QBO enhances the risk of cold intrusions, potentially leading to extreme temperature drops and heavy snow. It's a lesser known amplifier that works behind the scenes, making other patterns like La Niña or negative NAO more intense. So this is why we've been dealing with some cold snaps here at the end of January and some major snowstorms, is because we've really been in this pattern for the end of January, and it's looking like we could be in this as we head into February. So unfortunately, If you hate the cold air and hate snow and want to take a blow towards the snow, then I guess we're going to be dealing with this in February. But of course, we'll still take a look at the model, so stay tuned. Now, additional factors include the Arctic Oscillation and polar vortex, of course. While not standalone like the others, the AO is closely linked to the NAO and measures pressure differences between the Arctic and mid-latitudes. A negative AO, forecasted for February with values around negative 2.6, expands cold air southward, similar to a negative NAO, reinforcing chilly conditions across the east. And the polar vortex, which is often misunderstood as a storm, is actually a natural circulation of cold air high in the atmosphere. Recent mid-January stratospheric warming has disrupted it, like I discussed earlier, and combined with the cubeo's influence, this could extend cold effects into early February. In simple terms, a disrupted vortex is like opening a freezer door, spilling cold air over populated areas, which aligns with predictions of anomalous cold and potential record lows. So these factors all interact with one another. The La Niña provides the oceanic foundation for cold. The negative NAO and AO create atmospheric blocks to sustain it, and the QBO adds stratospheric disruption for added intensity. This combination points to a colder than average February in the central and eastern US. So, with that all being known, let's go ahead and get into the model, show you the expert guidance at the Climate Prediction Center, give you my bold prediction and thoughts of what we could expect, and then I'll wrap it up with a summary and some fun facts and folklore that y'all most likely never knew. And of course, as a disclaimer, please take this with a grain of salt, as anything over a week out is virtually impossible to forecast. All the models that we'll be taking a look at is pretty much all of these long-range models. The GEF Extended, Euro Weeklies, CSV2 Extended, and CMC are all weekly models. And of course, the Euro Seasonal, CSV2 Seasonal, and the CanSIP Seasonal are all the monthly models. And of course, we're going to take a look at both the temperatures and precipitation as far as the anomalies go anyway, whether or not we'll be above or below average. So let's go ahead and get into it. First, we're going to take a look at the GEFS and take a look at the temperature anomalies. Now, it's looking like we're going to be starting off February on a cold note, which is really no surprise, although Groundhog Day is coming up very, very soon. Hopefully, the groundhog predicts an early spring, but I doubt it. Usually, the groundhog's always wrong. But we can see cold out east, warmer than normal out west, and it's looking like we're going to remain in this pattern as we head into the middle of February, but watch as we head into the end of the month. Looking like we could head into an above average pattern, really, unless you live out here in the west coast or the northern plains. Now, what does the Euro Weeklies have to say? Well, they're showing much of the same story, except way below average temperatures here along the east coast and mid-Atlantic, while the western part of the country is going to be above average, which the Euro Weeklies and GEFS are in alignment when it comes to the beginning of February anyway. Now, what about the middle of the month? Well, really, there's a stark contrast between this and the GEFS. We're a little bit below average out west, below average here out in the east coast, mid-Atlantic and northeast, and a little bit of the Ohio Valley and Great Lakes. But it's looking like the central part of the country could be heading into an above average temperature pattern. What about the end of the month? Well, stark contrast between the Euro Weeklies and the GEFS, as it's showing much below average temperatures for much of us here in the lower 48 compared to what the GEFS was showing us, which was much of the country coming in on above average temperatures. So what does the CSV2 have to say? This is my favorite model, by the way. Well, they're all showing that at the beginning of February is going to be colder than average here out east, while the western part of the country is going to be a little bit warmer than normal. Now, the CSV2 is showing a little bit of a colder bias here in the southwest. And as we push this off into the middle of the month, this is looking like it's in agreement with the Euro Weeklies, as it's showing the central part of the country coming in on above average temperatures, while the west coast and east coast and northeast coming in on below average temperatures. Now, what about the end of the month? Well, it's in stark contrast to the GEFS, as it's showing the eastern part of the country coming in on below average temperatures, while the western part of the country is coming in on above average temperatures. Now, so far, all the models are in agreement with the beginning of the month, which is really no surprise. Usually, we get anything less than a week out, models start to become more accurate. Anything after that, they start to differ and become less reliable, of course. So one more model here before I give you my thoughts on the weekly models, and then we'll move into the monthly models. Now, of course, they're all in agreement when it comes to the beginning of the month. Like I said earlier, looks like the eastern part of the country is coming in on below normal temperatures, while the western part of the country is coming in on below normal temperatures, unless you live down here in the southwest. we're all in agreement with that. But head off into the middle of the month. This is when all the models differ, as it's showing more of the central part of the country and really much of the country coming in on below average temperatures. Then the end of the month, really no change. So this one differs from the rest of the models. So what are my thoughts when it comes to the weekly models? Well, y'all would probably be surprised, but I'm actually in agreement with the GEFS on this one. All the models are showing that the beginning of the month is going to be cold out east, a little bit warmer than normal out west, although could be still a little bit chilly out there, although it says a little bit warmer than normal. But why am I in agreement with the GEFS compared to the CSV2? Well, at the end of the month, I think we're going to finally come in on a gradual warm-up, especially as we head into March. So I would be in agreement with the GEFS when it comes to the weekly models. The rest of the weekly models are showing the same thing at the beginning of the month, but really differ as we head into the middle and end of the month. And this is the only one that really shows it warming up at the end of the month, which I would be in agreement with. But as we're going to be heading into more of an ENSO-neutral pattern, which is going to be combined with the negative NAO and the QBO, which I think the QBO is not going to play much of a role at the end of the month, as we're going to be heading into March. Now, what do the monthly models have to show us? Well, keep in mind that the Euro monthly models are usually like to show a warmer bias here. And we can see just this here, that the Southwest is going to be warmer than average, while the Great Lakes and the rest of the country is going to be a little bit cooler or sort of up in the air is what the whites means, a little bit either warm or colder than average. Now, what does my favorite model have to say? Well, I would be in agreement with this, showing that for the month of February, it's going to be colder than average here along the eastern part of the country, but in the central and western part of the country, it's going to be a little bit warmer than average. So I would be in agreement with this one. Concepts, well, I think they're more in alignment with the Climate Prediction Center has to say, and we'll get into that here in a little bit, as they're showing the northern half of the country being colder than average, while the southern half of the country is a little bit warmer than average. So I think they're getting their data from the Climate Prediction Center and a typical week La Niña into ENSO-neutral pattern. So let's go ahead and get into the Climate Prediction Center. I'll show you the expert guidance when it comes to the temperature outlook, and then we'll get into the precipitation of what we could expect. And as we take a look at the Climate Prediction Center, we can see that they are showing well below average temperatures here in the Pacific Northwest, the northern and central plains, and the upper Midwest, while the southeast and southwest come in on above average temperatures. Now, equal chances means either above or below average, just depends. But I'm thinking that in the beginning and middle of the month, I think it's going to be colder than average here out east, a little bit warmer than average out west. But I think as we head into the end of the month, like I said earlier, I'm in agreement with the GEFS, as I think we're going to be heading into a little bit warmer than average as we inch closer to March and inch closer to spring. So some relief is on the way, y'all. We just got to get past really the middle of February, and I think we're going to be out of the woods. And of course, we're going to be inching closer to severe weather season as well. And I will have my spring outlook video up this time next month, which will break down whether or not this severe weather season will be a bad one, or we'll not get in on much severe weather at all. So stay tuned for that. Now, back to the models here to take a look at the precipitation. We can see that we're going to be starting off February here really dry for much of the country, unless you live up here in the Pacific Northwest, which we could use a break from the precipitation here out east, as we came in on a lot of snowfall. Now, as we head into the middle of the month, really much of the same story. Could be dealing with some soggy conditions here in the central part of the country. Now, this is not my favorite model when it comes to the precipitation, and you can see why. Really, a lot more whites on the map than colors, but typical long-range model, usually anything over a week out, can't really forecast it, and usually becomes more uncertain. And the models typically differ at this point anyways. But we can see central and southern plains could be coming in on above average precipitation, while the rest of the country could come in on near normal to below average. Heading to the end of the month, it's looking like the eastern part of the country is going to be coming back into a soggy pattern, as well as out here in the west coast and northeast. So basically, beginning and middle of the month could be dry, but the end of the month, this model is showing that much of the country is going to be heading into a above average precipitation trend, which could mean severe weather at the end of the month if we stick to the GEFS, because they were showing us that by this time frame could head into some above average temperatures, which we can come in on severe weather in February, by the way, as well. Now, what does the Euro weeklies have to show us? Well, they're showing us pretty much the same exact thing that the GEFS was showing us, which is below average precipitation for much of the country, unless you live up in the Pacific Northwest. And of course, the whites means either above or below average, just depends, so keep that in mind. But So heading to the middle of the month, it's looking like we're going to be heading into a soggy pattern here in the west coast, soggy pattern here in the southeast, and a mixed bag here for the rest of the country. And as we head towards the end of the month and into March, Pacific Northwest is going to be looking to get slammed with a lot of heavy precipitation. Stark contrast between this and the GEFS, but really both of them are showing much of the same story in a way. As looking like the beginning of the month, both models are showing below average precipitation for much of us. But as we head into the end of the month, looking like much of the country is going to be heading into an above average precipitation pattern. So moving on to the CSV2, my favorite model. And we can see that as we head into the beginning of the month, really all the models are in agreement that we're going to be dry to start off the month of February. For much of us here in the lower 48, really unless you live up here in the northern plains and Pacific Northwest, that's really the only areas that I would probably say that there's going to be a lot of precipitation here at the beginning of February. Head off into the middle of the month, right around Valentine's Day. It's looking like a lot more precipitation is going to be occurring here in the Mountain West and parts of the Northeast, drying out here in the Pacific Northwest and here by Oregon. Head off into the end of the month. Looking like much of the country is going to be heading to an above average precipitation pattern. So really all the models are in agreement when it comes to precipitation anyway. They were all in sort of disagreement when it came to the temperatures in the middle and end of the month though. But I'm thinking that we could be coming in on a very soggy month of February here in the middle and end of the month, which could mean severe weather. Now, what does the CMC model have to say? This is my least favorite model, and you'll see why here in a minute. But really all the models are showing below average precipitation at the beginning of the month. This one slightly differs a little bit. Going to be heading to above average precipitation here in the middle of the month for really much of the country actually. And the end of the month, really looking to dry out here in the west coast. It's really the only one that differs from the rest of them, but really I don't like this model. I'm being biased here, but I do not like this model at all when it comes to the precipitation anyway. The temperatures is fine, but the precipitation anomalies really, I'm not a big fan of it. So moving on to the monthly models here. And if we stick to the Euro seasonal model for the month of February, you can see the Pacific Northwest going to be above average, Southeast, Ohio Valley, Northeast going to be above average. The rest of the country is going to be sort of a mixed bag of either above or below average. So they're pretty spot on with the Pacific Northwest. I'm in agreement with that one. Now what does the CSV2 have to show us? Well, they're showing us a mixed bag across much of the lower 48 as it's looking like the CSV2 is thinking that the Rockies is going to be below average as well as out here in the Ohio Valley. East Coast is going to be above average. Down here in the Southern Plains, down here by Texas and Louisiana is going to be above average, and the Northern Plains could be above average as well. I'm in sort of a disagreement with this one as I'm thinking that we're going to be dry to start off for much of us, but I think we're going to be leaning towards above average as we head into the middle and end of the month. But that's the CSV2 model. Now the ScanSIP model, this one typically is in alignment with what the Climate Prediction Center has to show us, and usually goes in alignment with what the factors show us. So this can be in consideration to be one of my favorite models, and they're showing us that the Northeast, Ohio Valley, Upper Midwest, Northern Plains could be above average, while the Deep South and the Gulf Coast and Florida could be below average, while the Rockies could be a little bit below average. Now, I would stick with this one. This one's a pretty trusted model. But as we take a look at the experts at the Climate Prediction Center, we can see that the Pacific Northwest can be above average. The Ohio Valley, Great Lakes, Upper Midwest, Northeast could be above average, while the Southeast and Southwest is going to be below average. Equal chances means either above or below average. Now, I would be in agreement with this as I'm thinking, like I said earlier, that we're going to be starting off February on a dry note, which we do need to dry out here out east as we came in on a lot of snowfall, and I'm sure most of y'all want to set the snow on fire at this point, just like I do, because I hate snow at this point and really don't want any more of it. But I think as we head into the middle and end of the month, I think we're going to be dealing with a lot of heavy precipitation here for much of us, and especially down here in Texas and Louisiana, as I think we could be dealing with an uptick in some severe weather as we head into the end of the month. And I will be breaking down whether or not we'll come in on a bad severe weather season or we won't come in on much severe weather at all. So stay tuned for that. I'll have that up at the end of February for y'all. So on to my bold prediction here. Given the combination of a transitioning La Niña, negative NAO and AO, and an easterly QBO, I predict widespread anomalous cold outbreaks across the central and eastern part of the country during the first half of February. potentially leading to multiple major winter storms and above average snowfall in the Midwest and Northeast. This could result in record low temperatures for some areas, with the cold pattern persisting longer than typical due to the polar vortex influence, though a gradual moderation may occur by month's end. This is why I was saying that I think the beginning of the month could be colder than average here out east. But then I think as we head into the end of the month, I think we're going to gradually warm up as we inch closer to March. But of course, please take this with a grain of salt, subject to change, of course. And what about a historical analog? For comparing this February to a previous one, well, a suitable analog year is 2013 and 14, which featured a weakly Niña, transitioning toward neutral, initially QBO, and persistent negative NAO and AO phases. That February saw repeated polar vortex intrusions, leading to extreme cold outbreaks across the central and eastern part of the country, with temperatures 10 to 15 degrees below normal in the Midwest and record snowfall in cities like Chicago and Detroit. The similarity lies in the stratospheric warming and blocked patterns that trapped cold air southward, mirroring the current setup for this February. This analog suggests heightened risks for winter weather across much of the country, though the La Niña is going to be weaker, potentially tampering the intensity. So we could be dealing with a February like we did back in 2013 and 14, which was very snowy and very, very cold. So now that we know pretty much it's going to be cold and dry to start here out east, and really cold much of the country, and sort of wet and a little bit warm and could be a little bit stormy at the end of the month, let's go ahead and get into some fun facts and folklore that y'all most likely never knew. A lesser known fact is that thunder snow, which did occur during this previous winter storm, which was Winter Storm Fern, lightning and thunder during snowstorms occurs most frequently in February, particularly around the Great Lakes due to intense lake effect convection. An accompanying stat includes, on average, only about 6.3 thunder snow events are reported annually in the US, but they can produce snowfall rates exceeding 2 inches per hour, making them a rare yet impactful phenomenon. Now, some folklore you most likely never knew. Did you know that February gives much snow, a fine summer it doth foresow? Suggesting heavy February snowfall predicts bountiful summer conditions. Another folklore states that fogs in February mean frosts in May, implying frequent February fogs foretell late spring frosts. Additionally, thunder in February signifies snow within 7 to 10 days, a proverb linking rare winter thunder to impending wintry precipitation. So to recap here, what are my thoughts on what we could expect for the month of February? Well, I think we're going to be cold out east and a little bit warmer than normal out west, although I think much of the country is going to start off on a cold note. Head off into the middle of the month, really not much change, at least until we head into the end of the month and into March, as I think we're going to be heading into an above average temperature trend. Now, what do I think is going to happen as far as precipitation goes? Well, since all of the models agree as far as the precipitation goes, we're going to go back to the CSV2 and show y'all the precipitation here. I think we're going to start off February on a dry note for much of us, really, unless you live in the Pacific Northwest and northern and central plains. But as we head into the middle and end of the month, I think much of the country is going to be heading into an above average pattern, which result in an uptick in some severe weather. And I will be covering in my spring outlook video in the end of February whether or not we'll be coming in on a significant severe weather season or not. So stay tuned for that. And of course, Groundhog Day is coming up as well, so hopefully he sees his shadow very, very soon. So I hope each and every one of y'all have a great February. I hope we don't get in on any more snowfall here this month. I hope that Groundhog is correct, like I said earlier, and predicts an early spring. But of course, the Groundhog is never right, so don't trust him. So again, have a great February, y'all. Appreciate all y'all for watching. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, as at Hero Wins Weather, we try to make weather forecasting fun and informative. So again, have a great February, and until next time, appreciate all of y'all for watching, and until next time, never stop forecasting.